Hello, Elfreda here of Metta-morphics. So I've been recently doing a course on integrative somatic parts work. And one of the things that was shared was a blog post by a lady called Lisa Rankin, and it was related to empathy. And it really got me thinking about how we experience empathy as individuals. So for some of us, when we experience our levels of empathy, whether we're experiencing cognitive empathy, which is I understand what you're thinking, or affective empathy, which is I understand what you're feeling, sometimes we can become a little bit overwhelmed by those feelings, especially if we're feeling a lot of affective empathy, which means I might feel somebody else's anger or their distress or their sadness. And sometimes that causes us to close ourselves off a little bit from that. And that can impact our ability to empathize because it's too much for our system. And so we kind of close off a little bit, and sometimes people might experience this as being cold or lacking understanding. Now this really got me thinking about my own experiences at times of empathy where yes, absolutely, I hold my hands up, I would close myself off a little bit because it's too much to maybe carry the other person's sadness or anger. But what was really stood out for me was that in Lisa Rankin's blog post, she talked about how compassion is much more effective. And when I thought about that, it really struck a chord with me because it made me realize that for me, I probably am more inclined to go to the side of compassion when it's too difficult for me to empathize. So, for example, when I am teaching or when I am coaching, then compassion is much more effective for me in that context because it allows me to self-regulate, to stay in a place of balance so that if the person I'm communicating with is maybe upset, which can often happen, that I don't get pulled into that narrative, that story, and then be impacted in how I can do my job. Now, if my guard is down and I'm, sitting relaxing watching the television, then I'm not using that tool of regulation and that tool of compassion, which means if something sad is on the television, yes, the tears will come up in my eyes, or something happy comes up and I will feel the happiness and I might get emotional. And that's because my empathy is open in those contexts. But it helped me to understand how important it is sometimes that we're mindful of how we use our empathy. So we do want to be able to empathize. And when it comes to empathy, to be aware that we can't fully put ourselves in another person's shoes, but empathy really is the willingness to try to understand them. So asking the right kind of questions, understanding the other person helps us. And so having that empathy is useful. But when it comes to dealing with challenging things, or when it comes to our professionalism, then using compassion is more effective. So compassion is not putting myself in the other person's shoes. Compassion is that focus on understanding. Can I bring a sense of kindness and understanding to the other person's experience? Can I bring validation to the other person's emotions? So even if I don't understand another person's anger, can I at least recognize and maybe say to them, I understand why you're angry, and that is okay. Because in doing that, in creating that compassionate connection, it allows the other person to feel seen, but it also means from our perspective, we can maintain a level of self-regulation. And that is obviously very important when it comes to challenging situations or when it comes to our professionalism in our work or in any other situation. If you're interested in finding out more about what I do or more on that topic, then please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd be very grateful if you would watch more of my videos or share some of my content. I'm always very grateful for anybody who does that.